The only other thing I'd say is too many investors look at the present. The present is already in the price. You have to think out of the box and sort of visualize 18 to 24 months from now what the world is going to be and what securities might trade at.
Here we have Stan Druckenmiller, the arguable GOAT swing trader. He has never had a losing year for 30 years. Thought of another way. If you had put $10,000 into his fund, you would have $26 million. Yes, $26 million today. How does Druckenmiller do it? This is obviously something he keeps to himself, but every now and then he drops hints into his trading process and how he thinks about markets.
Trucking, which has been a guiding light for my firms in terms of economic forecasting with a 6 to 8 month lead time, actually since I got in the business, is extremely weak.
Using the various collective performance of certain industries is an excellent way to build out a workable mental model for how the broader economy works. If you think about it, it makes sense that potential ongoing challenges in trucking would bleed into the broader economy 6 to 8 months down the line. Today, in the summer of 2023, we are seeing one of the largest and oldest trucking firms in the United States filing for bankruptcy. Is this the canary in the coal mine? With that said, let's go over on how to create a workable business cycle to keep in mind while trading or investing. Here is an example high-level industry capital cycle from Marathon Asset Management, one of the best hedge funds on Wall Street. A good starting place is the max optimism phase, where high prospective returns drive a crowd of new entrants, significantly increasing supply or competition such that returns fall. This leads to underperformance, and investors turn pessimistic on the sector, forcing industry consolidation and weaker competitors out. This coincidentally leads to an improved supply-side environment or less competition, which causes sector-wide returns to improve beyond the cost of capital, which bring us back to square one. A drove of new entrants join the market and on and on. In August of 2023, where do you think Uber is now? Where do you think Elon Musk's SpaceX is? The entire stock market can be random, but the business cycles inherent within industry groups is not. Instead of diving head first into a trading strategy, it is better to develop a business cycle strategy first. Professional investors know there is no one-size-fits-all trading strategy for all environments. They answer with a trading strategy for each environment within a business cycle. So let's dive deeper into business cycles and how they work. Let's look at the infamous cod fishing industry. Over approximately 150 years, the cod fishing and processing industry has evolved from one where excess profits were earned at the ports, then the profits shifted to the food processors, then to today where the consumers of fish are the biggest beneficiaries. The primary driver, the decline in the cost of technology, which has removed the excess profits earned at the pinch points in the industrial process. Cod is prized because it is high in protein and low in oils and fats. Fresh, the meat flakes and falls from the bone, so it is easy to prepare. When it is dried, the residue is more than 80% protein. Almost the entire fish can be put to use. In Iceland, the organs are used as fertilizer, and even the bones are softened with milk and fed to children. The fish is large and easily caught. It is so easy to catch that sport fishermen have no interest in it. Have you ever heard of a cod fishing competition? Never. In the early 16th century, cod was so prized that Portuguese fishermen sailed to Newfoundland to catch cod for the Basque market in Spain. This was a dangerous endeavor at the time. Shipwrecks and disappearances were a regular part of this new adventure. Probably not bad to assume the price of cod at the time reflected these tribulations. It was a luxury good. By the mid-16th century, over 60% of the fish eaten in Europe were cod, and this remained this way for nearly 200 years. To prepare the fish for the long journey to market, the cod was gutted, sun-dried and salted. Space was limited on the small, sail-powered boats at the time, so all of the processing of cod took place in the ports. And herein is our first pinch point. Harbors with natural exposed rock slabs for drying cod, located near cod fields, were few and far between. This resulted in the bull market in cod processing. These folks were getting rich. Headlines with men of no particular skill and with very little capital made fortunes. Sound familiar?
And I don't know if you could see it on the camera, but it just struck me when I walked into this room with 1,800 servers just humming at full pace. It was extraordinary to see visually.
Was it like a warehouse?
It was a warehouse, yeah, it was a warehouse.
While crypto may have some long-term use cases, as faith in fiat currencies declines, it is interesting how history tends to rhyme over time. Cod processors then, to crypto enthusiasts promising insanely high returns, low effort maximum price project, are reminiscent of what has happened in the past with previous boom cycles. How does this all end? So prior to the American Revolution, a large three-way trade evolved. Ships took New England salted cod to Europe, African slaves to the Caribbean sugar plantations, and Caribbean molasses to the newly established New England rum distilleries. By the 18th century, the three-way trade, powered by cod, had lifted New England, current-day Boston, from a distant colony of starving settlers to an international commercial power. Let's look back at the business cycle. We are now at the point where excess profits are being earned at the harbors. But as these excess profits reach their peak, a technology emerges to disrupt the pinch point in the chain. Three emerging technologies working in combination arrive to disrupt the powerful three-way trade from Europe, Boston, Africa. The first was developed in the 1920s by Clarence Birdseye. After a series of home experiments, successfully developed food freezing. The second came with the introduction of steam-powered boats, or more specifically, trawlers. They were larger and more efficient than their sail-powered predecessors. The third was sonar, which for the first time could accurately locate shoals of cod, and by the 1930s became standard issue on British vessels. Once food freezing technology was incorporated into the new steam-powered trawlers, there was no need to dock in the old harbors to cure fish or pay commission to the Boston market. Instead, Spanish vessels fished off the Newfoundland coast and docked fresh fish in La Rochelle, France. The old harbors and Boston market went into decline. All of this new tech was expensive, but due to the excess rewards of cod at the time, folks in the industry borrowed heavily to stay competitive. Does this sound familiar?
How many properties did you buy in this last 5-year period?
I believe in the last 5-year period I bought about 6 properties.
And what did you buy them for?
For investments.
What did you understand about the loans?
Well, unfortunately, I didn't ask too many questions. I mean, in the old days, I would shop around, but because of the frenzy, and I was so busy looking to buy other properties, I didn't really focus on shopping around for mortgage brokers.
Did you read the paperwork?
No, I didn't.
Now, she's losing money on every property.
At this stage of most business cycles, the returns are starting to diminish due to the influx of new entrants, so it is typical for participants to borrow money to keep up with the competition, while at the same time juicing their returns. All this leads to a vicious cycle of having to catch more fish to service the debt, and overfishing became common. What do you think happened as a result of all of this tech, making it much simpler to catch cod? What happens to the price of an asset when there is an oversupply of it? It crashed. Cod wars broke out over rights to fish, and the industry went into crisis, and government intervention was inevitable. As the cod wars intensified, governments finally began to intervene. The first government to intervene was Iceland, which asserted sovereignty over its coastal waters to a distance of 1 mile, then 4 miles, then 50 miles, and in 1973, 200 miles. The effect of this was to nationalize the waters for the purpose of supporting the local industry and force foreign vessels elsewhere. Other governments took note. Canada, the US, and EU, and soon the entire North Atlantic had been carved up into 4 exclusive zones. The biggest impact of this, fish quotas were set to prevent overfishing and restore depleted fish stocks. How does this government intervention fit into the business cycle we're developing? Bad? Good? I'll give you a couple seconds to answer. It wasn't good. It wasn't bad. It was disastrous. If left alone, the invisible hand of the business cycle would have played out. Capital would leave the industry as returns got grinded to zero. There would be waves of bankruptcies of people who borrowed money to build out their boats. This would kill off a massive chunk of the competitors, and then, after a period where only the strongest survive, the cycle would begin turning. With so few competitors left, prices of cod would begin to rise, and the cycle would repeat. But that's not what happened here. Does this government intervention sound familiar?
Soaring gas prices, falling home prices, and rising unemployment.
There were congressmen whose offices were being flooded with letters, with phone calls from angry constituents that $700 billion would go to Wall Street.
History rhymes. Mankind and business cycles have been going on for hundreds of years. Back to the cod fish business cycle. The governments intervened by setting up zones across the Atlantic, and at the same time, support financed, of course, with taxes. This kept industry capacity high and the price of fish low. Even worse was the quota system. How would they enforce this? It was administratively complex and was often flouted. An example of this inefficiency was by the Canadian government at the time. For every dollar the fisheries earn, Canada invested $3 in the industry. Stimmies have existed for hundreds of years. With all that said, how can we apply what we learned to a modern-day trading strategy? As mentioned earlier, the cod fishing and processing industry over approximately 150 years has evolved from one where excess profits were earned at the ports, then the market, then the food processors, to one where it is the consumers of fish that are the industry's chief beneficiaries. How can we apply what we learned about the cod fishing industry to the industry capital cycle? Where do you think we are in the AI cycle? Let's take note that a primary driver of the process for the cod fishing industry was the decline in the cost of technology, which cycled through the pinch points of the industrial process, removing excess profits and allocating them to the next benefactor until the benefactor ended up being the consumer. Where do you think the overall internet is in the industry capital process? Remember the excess profits the cod processors earned. Is that Google today? Will anyone ever disrupt Google? Finally, as an example, when evaluating a company for a potential long position, it is not just the magnitude of the company's profits that matter, like the capacity of Boston's cod ports, but also its sustainability. Why dock at Boston at all? Is Nike's $1 billion marketing budget enough? Is Nvidia's research and development proprietary? And for firms with less control of their destiny, a focus on the industry supply side, for signs of rising levels of competition is necessary. Is the Thai cement industry expanding again? What business will be the equivalent of the Boston fish market? This is the short. Who's next in the cycle that will be affected by excess profits? This is the long. Excess profits are being wrung out of the trucking industry. And Druckenmiller here notes the underperformance. What do you think the repercussions of this will be?
Found that the exchange was transferring billions in customer funds.
The most significant financial crisis in the post-war period.
Did you expect